You're listening to the Valley Current.
There you go.
Here's Neil. Hey, Jack, you can see I haven't had a haircut in a couple of years, I guess.
I'm shocked. I think they do personal service out there in wherever you're at. Where are you?
Yeah, I know, but I just don't. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Can you see Neil? He's here too.
Hi, Neil.
Hi, Jack. But the funny thing is, besides the girls, I did this years ago. Besides the girls, I got to update it. I started doing the cars, and somewhere I started doing the houses and the dogs. I don't remember if I have them all.
You got to ultimately get on 60 Minutes. I mean, that book has got to make its way to a television set of interviews about what you wanted to do to make sure that America got to understand kind of how the world of law was created around this notion of a class action, and then the authentic story of you as the pioneer doing everything that you could to bring justice, because you started with the perspective of bringing justice as sort of a small town lawyer, and you ended up becoming a big city international lawyer. In many ways, there's many European firms that try to grab onto Bob and try to get a piece of him in some form if they can. I mean, that's another part of the story that you should get into.
That's another part of the story.
We're going to have to talk. That's new to me. We'll have to talk.
Well,
it's called the Global Justice Network and the Global Justice Forum.
And they're really developing. She just sent out, Melissa just sent something out this week, and I'm pretty sure you were one of the addressees.
Yeah, I saw
about what they're doing, and we're going to try to meet in the fall in Brussels. It's something I started in 1995, I think it was, and it was revolutionary, and hopefully will turn out to be something. And interestingly enough, for Neil's purposes, Lieff Cabraser will be 50 years old on September 15, 2022. And we want to get this book out because it's going to be the 50th anniversary of that firm, and should be celebrated. Because Jack, what I used to do at the retreats, I used to bring the Martindale Hubble from 1972 when I started the firm. Right. And I read the names of 3/4 of the firm with big ads who were gone.
They're gone. Yeah, that's a good technique to explain to people how fragile law firms are. Law firms are fundamentally very fragile organizations, very fragile.
Some of these were major firms like
Pettit and Martin,
Brobeck, Flager, and
Obrecht, Heller, Ehrman, Brobeck, Flager, and Harrison,
Bronson, McKinnon,
right.
Pettit, Martin. I mean, a lot of these firms were major law firms,
right? And
they just disappeared. And Lieff, Cabraser, Hyman, and Bernstein is there. That's right. The amazing thing that we've outlived, and we outlived all those firms that I went to get a job when I first came to San Francisco in 1963. And the Brobeck Flagers and the Bronson, and I don't blame them for not giving me a job. I mean, my address on my resume was General Delivery, San Francisco. And who the hell is going to hire someone who doesn't even have a home or residence, among other problems? So in any event, it's kind of interesting.
You've got the same rags to riches story that really made America great. I mean, you really expressed your human potential to the utmost. If you look at the bigger picture, I mean,
that's right. And that rags to riches story is, I think, America's favorite story. They love to hear about people who are able to rise up and overcome anything you could throw at them. And this is what I'm trying to without the women, without the rags to riches, it is a nothing. And so in any event, you guys are absolutely right. And I don't know how to deal with this issue
Let me give you a really good idea. You should watch the TV series that does the life of the guy who founded Playboy magazine, Hugh Hefner. You should watch that series. Yeah. That series tells the story of Hugh Hefner in a very rich way. And of course, all the various women that are in it. And without the various women that are in it, you really wouldn't get the way he thought about women for Playboy, which was a very classy way that he thought about women. And in fact, I think the way you should think about this book is turning it into something that Netflix would take as an original series about how this whole area of class action cases came into being because of everything Bob pioneered, trying to convince Belli that this could have been Belli's firm. Belli could have gone down in history if he listened to Bob Lieff and said, "You're right, Bob, why are we dicking around with these single plaintiff cases? It's so stupid." But Belli liked to do what he liked to do, and you couldn't necessarily change his mind about it.
If I may.
Yeah.
Back on this other part too, one of the two of the primary reasons why, it seems to us to make sense, I believe, including the women, is simply because we have to include Bob's whole life as a person for people to be interested in reading it. Otherwise, they're not going to read it. But even beyond that, Bob has been kind enough to share enough so that I think you can really see that the roots of why he's done what he's done, why he's gone out on behalf of all these people and accomplished so much, that same energy, that same orientation is what played out in his personal life with the women. It all comes from the same source. And you have to kind of understand that in its totality. Otherwise, the professional work, however impressive it is, can seem sterile. And this is about a human being.
Right.
And what drives us all. And
you got to get all the dimensions in, and you've got to get in some of the stuff like Bob was not prejudiced against women or gay women in the profession. And years ago, it was really hard for a woman to become a partner at a law firm. And it was really hard for a woman to even be mentored. And it was impossible for a lesbian woman.
On the other hand, that's what saved the day for me, because if she had been an attractive straight woman, God only knows what would have happened. But this was great. And I was totally able to stay away from her because she was a lesbian woman.
But she was good. But she was good. She's good at what she does, and she's a good writer. And a law firm is a lot of different components. And Bob is a maestro at putting the symphony together. I mean, you got to get out the fact that he knows how to pick talent, and he really did pick talent very well.
You're right. Jack, you're so on. I appreciate this. I wanted to be like Al Davis. Al Davis was the guy at the Oakland Raiders. He said, "I'm picking the best athlete. I don't know about who plays what position and so forth. I'm getting the best athlete. I'm going to put them in the right spot." And that's what I tried to do. I tried to follow Al Davis in his theory. I'd pull out the smartest people without regard to where I was going to put them. And they were all different. Some of them knew how to try a case. Some of them knew how to settle a case. Some of them knew how to write a brief, but they may not have known the other two parts.
Right.
And also by bringing them together, it was really great. And they don't follow that tradition in their hiring policy today. They're more concerned about diversity, so that most of the people they hire have last names that you could not pronounce because they come from parts of the world that you're not familiar with.
But you hired a lot of women over the years.
I did, and interestingly enough, I over the years I used to go through it and check it out, and it was always 50-50. I mean, maybe 51-49, but
But starting how early?
Day one.
I mean, so from the beginning,
from the beginning, and Elizabeth Fraser, who was given an award for women lawyers, it's called the Margaret Brent Award. Two of my women partners have received this award, but lesbians. But in any event, she said, and it was really touching, she said that Bob Lieff did not know what a glass ceiling was. And that was at her speech when she got the award. She was there, and it's true. I paid no heed to any glass ceiling.
I mean, these are all great people for Neil to meet because they themselves have interesting stories, you'll probably get a few more gigs as a result.
Jack,
you want
Jack,
more work.
Yeah, Jack, could I arrange, with Bob's permission, could I arrange to talk with you at a separate time?
Yeah, of course. Of course. I'm a big promoter of Bob. I think I think it's unfortunate that he's not still at Lieff Cabraser. I was kind of surprised when you sort of semi-retired from there and then you sort of retired from there, because I always thought the brains of the operation were Bob Lieff, and I still think that's true. I still think that most of the people there are okay, but they don't have the same brain as Bob does.
Well, as Elizabeth even said to me just last week in connection with what we have to do with Judge Chabria and what we have to do with Roundup, she said to me that Bob, she said, you had to go back to your position of doing the strategy, and I will do under your wing the tactics. And that's right. She knows how to write a brief.
Yeah.
A hell of a lot better than I do. But she doesn't know how to talk to people. She doesn't know how to talk to a judge. She doesn't know how to get what we really want. And she sees that now. And she also, and I'm telling Neil this, that when I so-called retired in 2007, she said to me, she was almost in tears. She said, I know how to be the number 2 person, but I don't know how to be the number 1. And now you're leaving, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, she has developed her abilities, and she's doing pretty well.
Neil, I do think you've got a big job in front of you, and I don't know how you decide to sort of organize it and divide it up, because I do think there's so many threads you can pull on, and weaving them together is going to be a very interesting task, because there's very big diversity of experiences that Bob has had. He's not purely a lawyer. He's more of a MBA acumen applied to law, but in a very successful way, making huge wealth for that firm and for the members of that firm, as well as for himself, and building quite a legacy that in many ways, I don't think it's yet been fully appreciated or fully recognized. So hopefully your book will do that.
Well, thank you. Your perspective on that will be helpful. We've put together a 60-page outline.
Okay.
So I think we have the backbone of his life, and we have to fill it in.
60 pages. That's quite an outline. That's quite an outline. That's going to be a 600-page book then, right?
Well, it's quite a life. Jack was just explaining that your life is what you've done is complex, and he was wondering how we're going to get it all together into a book, because of that you weren't just a lawyer, you've been a businessman who's brought that perspective and helped accomplish so much.
And Bob has succeeded in a way that no other lawyer I'm aware of really anywhere in the United States. And certainly if you limited it to Columbia grads, Bob and I went to Columbia Law School. Bob went to Columbia Law School. Bob went to Columbia Business School and the business school. I went to Columbia Business School. I went to UCLA Law School. That's how I ended up in California. But Bob's got a very rich story of working with Mel Belli and really trying to get Belli to realize it's a much bigger possibility with class action cases, which then he manifested in Lieff Cabraser. And really, you made Elizabeth Cabraser what he is and that firm, what she is, and that firm.
Jack, my impression is that that Bob pioneered the area. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, if you look at class action cases, they were very few before Bob really lit the match and said, "Hey, let's use this like a blowtorch." And it really did change the world of litigation, and it really did create a category which now, of course, there's a lot of players in, and it's unfortunate because there's been a certain degradation from the number of smaller class cases that Bob would never take, and Bob would even say probably shouldn't be filed. But in general, Lieff Cabraser is one of the most profitable firms in the world. I don't know if you're going to get any of their data, but Lieff Cabraser probably puts to shame a lot of the Wall Street law firms.
Well, that is definitely true. Because the Wall Street law firms do publish their statistics.
Yes.
And, but these guys who do very well in Wall Street might make between $1 and $2 million a year.
Right.
My ex-partners, even those who do nothing, do make north of $5 million a year just for being there in the entity that I created. So, oh yeah, there it is.
I put the photo up just to remind Neil that everything that Bob says often has some YouTube video or some image. I mean, that's the magical part of the internet, and you can get to it very quickly. So you can build quite a photo journal inside this book that would make it very readable, because these are real stories in real life and real things that happen, including the brief that was filed on behalf of Ruby to the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, I think that there's a lot of documentation that you have. I'm sure it's in your basement, maybe right there in your office.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to show Neil. This story, adding the women, will sell both books and TV. The money is there. Secondly, Bob's legacy.
Wow. I have to say that, well, then you are going to have a bit of a subtext, because I do think that makes it more interesting as a book if you can get away with it, because of course there's a lot of people that'll sue you if you put
No, they won't. No, they're all friends. But here's the thing. You really captured it, as you always do, Jack. And I'm telling Neil, just before he got here, I had a conversation on the phone, and she said to me, and I'm telling you, Neil, the same thing Jack just said, that if you sanitize this, Susan is pressuring me to sanitize this. Sanitize.
No.
And you know, she doesn't want to have any wives, any girlfriends, any females in the goddamn thing. That's, well, so, and I've compromised that to some extent with Neil. I've at least gotten the wives, I got so-called permission, so to speak. Well, she is in part subsidizing all this because she wants me to do this. The book, that is, which I think the book would be great, but I think the personal stories are so rich. I mean, Bob is a very networked guy. I mean, I don't know a lawyer, frankly. Even F. Lee Bailey, I don't think is as networked as you are. No, and
right?
He was a gross failure. I could talk about him in a couple of minutes, but he was a terrible guy. I just said to Neil, I knew him for 25 years in a number of settings, and I'm going to share that with you very shortly. But to finish on this other point, because I think it's vital, I think it's critical to the whole project we're doing. And I think Linda said to me, you've got to have the women. She said, without the women, it's deadly. You're not going to sell the books. You've got to have the women. And here's one who was one of the women. And I said to her, Neil, I haven't even told you this. I said to her, you've got to speak to Neil. You've got to tell him about your own feelings about me.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.